Hello and welcome to another of PAVE's weekly virtual discussions. I'm Ed Niedermeyer. I'm the communications director here at Partners for Automated Vehicle Education. And this week we are bringing back our AV Answers series, which is where we provide an opportunity to have your questions answered by the leading experts in the automated vehicle and automated driving technology space. And this week I'm extremely excited to welcome Laura Major. She is the Chief Technical Officer at Motional, which is an autonomous driving developer that is a joint venture between Aptiv and Hyundai. She is also the author of What to Expect When You're Expecting Robots, which I have just recently finished reading myself and endorse in the strongest possible terms. I think if you're interested in these topics, you really have to read this book. So Laura, welcome to PAVE's virtual discussion.
Thanks so much, Ed. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time to answer the questions that people have sent in to us. We have a giant backlog of questions here at PAVE, all the things that people want to understand better, and so we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to help answer these questions. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We're going to start at sort of looking at questions related to sort of the function of AVs themselves. And to start off, this is one that we get a lot, and I see a lot of misperceptions around. But what work are you doing related to detecting bicyclists and protecting their intent? And of course, if you want to include pedestrians in your answer as well, that would be great.
Yeah, this is a great question, Ed. Operating autonomous vehicles alongside cyclists, I think, is one of the most challenging problems of the industry, and particularly, given the speed of travel and their maneuverability. And this is something that we as human drivers do without thinking about it. We don't only detect a cyclist is present, but we also can predict, what it's going to do next, what its intent might be, and we use that to adapt our behavior. And so we have to design our AV to do that as well. So building accurate prediction models is a really key building block for doing this, for informing, our self-driving stack, where the cyclist is and where it may go next. In the last few years at Motional, we've been spearheading the development of machine learning-based prediction approaches. And we released a set of publications on this, including PredictNet. And we've also launched a challenge related to prediction in the New Scenes framework. And so, beyond just having these machine learning models, we have to also have the right data set. And this is, not just about volume of data. This is about having the right data that contains, very rare examples of edge cases, such as when a cyclist, suddenly changes direction in an unexpected way. Our AV can only learn how to behave around such behavior if we've seen it and trained it to do so, before launching the system. And so to this end, we're building what we call a continuous learning framework, within which, we specifically mine for edge cases where our current models may have trouble accurately predicting. So that, for every mile that our AV drives, our machine learning models improve. And this is done automatically as, training data improves with the relevant cases that we were able to focus on.
Yeah. So on a similar note, how ready are AVs to interpret hand signals from flaggers, crossing guards, law enforcement, and maybe how do they do this?
Yeah, again, that's a really hard problem too, because there are, such a wide spectrum of hand signals, and they're not well, codified, and they, can vary widely between, one cross guard and another. And so, for example, yeah, we use our continuous learning framework to help, inform and develop models to be able to detect and understand these different hand gestures. But in addition to that, I think, we can't rely on autonomous detection and understanding of those yet. So we pair that with remote vehicle assistance, so that you can have a human operator, who is remotely located in a command center, be able to, take a look at the situation and try to understand what a crossing guard may be trying to get the traffic to do, and help give the instruction to the AV, so the AV can then do what it does best, which is, execute a clear command, follow a route that is well, well understood.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There are some things that you just need a human for, and oftentimes that interpersonal communication is part of that. So how do companies in the space take experience into consideration when developing path planning technology? Is a little more specific of a question.
Yeah. So, I think for us, safety is first priority, but certainly, passenger comfort and experience is also important. So, we think about it as, these three different things that we want to provide to a passenger. One is observability, then predictability, and then directability, which you may recognize, talked about it some in the book. So observability first is understanding what the vehicle's doing, being able to, to have comfort with the behavior of the system. The second is predictability, having some understanding of what the vehicle may do next, what it may do in the face of some challenging situation or unexpected situation. And then lastly is directability. So, there may be times when the passenger wants to have a say in exactly where they get dropped off, or they might want to stop their ride early because they want to grab a cup of coffee before a meeting, or they may want to ask for remote customer assistance to understand a certain city information, or question about the vehicle. Could really range. All the things that today we ask our a taxi driver for. So so we factor that in and build that into the passenger experience within the vehicle.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Definitely, when you're experiencing new technology, you want sort of all of those things, right, to feel sort of safe and well taken care of. What specific skills or focus areas should experiential learning activities such as Soapbox Derby incorporate so that today's youth be able to pursue and impact AV-related careers 5, 10, or 15 years from now?
Yeah, there are so many avenues, open to kids now that just weren't there when we were growing up. For example, children are now learning programming, in a visual way that makes it, both, understandable, but also fun. And they can, have that experience of building something, creating something, even if it's simple. I know my daughter has this summer, my 8-year-old has a tech camp that she's going to, and she went to it, pre-COVID, and had a great experience, just seeing her mind develop, seeing her analytical skills develop as she, does some simple, programming projects. I think is incredible. Something I wish I would have had it when I was 8 years old. So yeah, I encourage people to think about how to get exposure. You mentioned a few examples. There are a lot, there's so many now of different, robotic systems you can build, programming languages you can, use to build simple programs. But getting kids exposed to this young, I think really does, help them to develop, again, that analytical skill set that they can build on as they develop.
Yeah, and just to just kind of as a follow-up, I mean, one of the things I really took away from your book was that, so much of any kind of robotics or automation really requires understanding people and human society and human interaction, sociology, psychology, all these social sciences, which to someone like me with that kind of a background is really empowering, because you don't hear that often. I mean, would you say that there is, a need for people who are not just in sort of traditional STEM in this field?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, we're building systems that are going to interact with people constantly. There's going to be the passengers that ride inside of them. There are going to be the pedestrians that are operating around them. There are other drivers on the road. And so these systems have to, behave in ways that are going to work for society. And so that does, require, skills and insights and ideas that go beyond just technical. I think, machine learning is a great example of an area where, we're really able to now start to have, human-like, performance in certain tasks anyways, like detection, within video or imagery, even go beyond human performance. And so, finding, skill sets that you can bring together, cross-functionally to solve these problems in different ways, I think is really important for the future challenges that lie ahead of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. It's one of my favorite things about this space is that it really does require people from so many kind of different backgrounds. And of course, the conversations that come out of that are always so fascinating. Yes. Sort of moving, into the sort of development questions related to the development of AVs. What is your approach to making a safe autonomous vehicle affordable?
Yeah, another really great question. So first, for today, this is where Motional strategic partnerships with our parent companies really come into play. So, not only do we have to develop a vehicle that's, safe and capable, which is our focus at Motional, but we also have to be able to manufacture it on a global scale in order to make robotaxis a reality for people around the world. And so that means, the vehicle has to be cost effective. So Motional, we're able to leverage our partnership with Hyundai, a leader in automotive manufacturing, and Aptiv, a leader in leading, tier 1 supplier, to be able to not just, design and build and test a robotaxi, but set it up in a way that we'll be able to actually manufacture it, so that it can be, cost optimized for global production. But also, I think the conversation around cost optimization kind of, represents where we are in the evolution of driverless technology today. So, my belief is that first, you have to solve the safety critical problems to create an AV system that can robustly operate autonomously, which includes, an abundance of, resources to make sure you have the right level of redundancy. And so I think once we have that and we have that deployed and we have that at scale, we can start to look at, those solutions and how we can develop them in a more cost-effective way. Of course, the cost of sensors and computers, will continue to come down, but also as we learn more about the performance of safe AVs, we can start to optimize for other factors, such as cost. But the challenge, will be to lower the cost while maintaining the same rigorous safety standards. And this is, a critical factor, in the mass adoption of driverless technology. But again, the first step is we have to have safe, robust AVs that work well, and then we can optimize for cost.
Right. Yeah. We had to have sort of big, chunky cell phones, right, before we could have flip phones and then smartphones. We didn't just wait until we had smartphones, right? You have to one step at a time. All right. So yeah. So diving into the development process a little bit more, as a general matter, what do you view as the primary high-level challenges or hurdles for the widespread deployment of passenger AVs, L4 or L5, either as a service or some sort of consumer ownership or use? Are they technological and ADS capability related? Making AV use cost competitive with conventional autos and other mobility options, building and maintaining public confidence and adoption, something else? So a lot to potentially work with here.
Definitely. So I think for where we are now, this is still a technology challenge. I think, the technology challenges are a lot harder and require longer development timelines than were first appreciated. So a couple of the sort of key challenges, that I think still remain, one is this idea that, in order to develop an AV system, it requires a much tighter partnership between the AV company and the OEM than originally was thought. And so we've seen the whole industry progress in that direction, right? But ultimately, the integration of the vehicle's brain and body is an incredibly complex process. And I think many organizations underestimated that. We've really been able to take that to the next level with our collaboration with Hyundai. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to be able soon to reveal more details on the design of our next generation driverless system, which is with the Ioniq 5. Which really starts to show the power of co-designing across an AV team and an OEM. Our collaborators at Hyundai have been tremendous to work with, and together we've created an AV solution that combines the strengths of autonomy with the strengths of electrification. But also another key technical challenge that the industry is all working so hard on is what I call the long tail problem. So we saw fast progress for many groups, and we continue to see this to reach a proof of concept, which is motivating for the industry and generates a lot of excitement, shows what's possible. But reaching that that next tier of sophistication and robust performance across these corner cases, it takes a lot more time than many realize. We as human drivers handle these corner cases again, with just sort of natural intuition. And so we have to teach our AVs to do the same, and then we have to validate that. And then, so that's sort of, I think, again, these are sort of the core technical challenges that we're all working so hard on in the industry. But once we get past these technical challenges, I can point back to the last question around cost, which really, I think to be able to achieve the full potential in terms of the scale and the adoption, we will have to address that next. But again, I think they have to be addressed in that order. We have to solve the big technology challenges with creating robust performance, that can scale from city to city, and then we can start working on, seeing some cost improvements. Of course, we work them in parallel as well, but
Sure.
in terms of deployment.
Right, absolutely. And sort of in this development process, what is the best approach to collecting and developing edge cases for training? How do you know if your approach is comprehensive enough?
Yeah, so ensuring that we have the right data is critical, and it's not just about volume. And so at Motional, we work really hard to curate specific data sets that focus on edge cases, and we identify those often through situations that we don't handle well yet. And then we can feed those curated data sets back into our continuous learning framework. And by curating these data sets, not only do we improve our performance with every mile that we drive, but we also can identify scenarios where we don't have enough edge cases in our data set. And so then we can go and take an initiative to collect data that will specifically target that corner case, whether it's cyclist behavior or emergency vehicles or any number of things that we might not encounter that often on the road. We can go again try to target some of those areas or times of day or locations where that activity is more common, and extract those rare cases to put into our training sets. So yeah, it's something we put a lot of thought into, and it's really core to this continuous learning framework that I think is important for making the performance robust.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but the how do you know it's comprehensive enough piece of that too seems like it would be really tricky. I mean, how do you? I mean, is it required? Is this part of why having sort of a limited domain sort of allows you to have a higher confidence that you've seen everything that you're realistically going to see there? Or and yeah, I don't know if you can shed more light on that or not.
Yeah, there's a few, I think key strategies around that. It really all revolves around kind of exposure of the system, to large number of situations, large number of miles. So we do that, and again, diverse situations as well. So we do that, we have testing on public roads in all of the cities where we do our development, as well as cities where we plan to operate. So that we have a data set that cuts across many different geographies and locations, which again gives you a broader range of data to pull from. We also look at testing across different times of day, different types of lighting conditions, those sorts of things. And then, so that's sort of one piece of it. Another piece is, the way we find that data in our data sets that we collect is we look for areas where we didn't perform well. It might not have led to a disengagement, that might not have been an issue, but maybe we didn't, the accuracy of our prediction model maybe wasn't at where we wanted to be, or we didn't detect a cyclist that was, half occluded by a truck, let's say. So we look for metrics like that, where we can automatically identify where our performance wasn't where we want it to be, and then we can inspect those situations more closely and understand why not, and then go back and mine the broader data set for situations like that. So it's a framework that we're developing that has different layers of looking across the data set we have, and really trying to find creative ways to find these rare scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. And our last panel on operational design domain would be really good context if you want to sort of delve into some of these issues a little more. So what metrics are the most important for AV safety, whether testing or deployment?
Yeah, so I think the whole industry has kind of focused in on disengagement metrics as that kind of final metric to see if your system is safe on the road. And that's a good metric, and we definitely track that as well. But we also couple that with a lot of internal metrics that are internal to the subsystems within our AV stack. And ultimately, those subsystems have to perform well for us to have a system that on the road is going to have very few or zero disengagements. And so, these include metrics related to localization, prediction, perception, motion planning. For example, like we look at the robustness for our perception system to detect and classify vulnerable road users. We look at how our motion planning system handles certain certain scenarios such as parked cars or a wandering bicyclist. Also at Motional, for perception and prediction, we published a subset of our metrics as a part of the New Scenes data set. And we're really excited to contribute to that. Not only do we think about it deeply internal at Motional, but we also share and engage across the industry because it's an important problem for the whole industry. And so we will also be sharing some new metrics with our new plan data set that's coming out soon.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And thinking of these things as a system of systems, right? And
That's right.
That's a really helpful way to think about a lot of these questions. Wrapping up the sort of development questions, what are some of the considerations around logging of or retention of the enormous amount of data captured by autonomous vehicles' visual spectrum cameras?
Yeah, so there's always the discussion of cost and value versus value in data retention. And so while there is certainly, value to large scale data sets, what's more important is what's contained in that data set. So, coming back to this point of edge cases, we're able to, proactively search our data, these large data sets for interesting scenarios, to find those, save those, and really we use a different retention policy for that curated data set than we do these large volumes of more nominal type activity. So through that, we strike a balance of kind of cost and value of the data set.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is already sort of bringing us into kind of some big picture trust and sort of challenge related questions. And one of them is several industry groups have been calling for the sharing of safety related data among manufacturers as a way to improve safety outcomes in product development, also building consumer trust. What do you think of this idea? And if favorable, how will it get started?
Yeah, so at Motional, we believe that safety transcends competition, and we've been at the forefront of safety-focused data sharing. It was back in 2019 that we pioneered a movement with the release of our New Scenes data set. And today public data sets are more commonplace across the industry, but back then it wasn't. New Scenes was really the first, and it really started this culture of data sharing and collaboration within the industry. As a proof point, New Scenes has been downloaded by over 12,000 researchers and cited in 600 academic papers. And many others have followed suit. So if you look across the industry, there have been at least 10 other data sets that have been now made available publicly across the industry. And all of this is great evidence that data sharing really is an enabler, to fuel progress across the industry. And we're not stopping here with New Scenes. We're continuing to innovate, continuing to think deeply about, what data we can provide that will push and, help the industry and, both academics as well as, others in the industry move forward. And so just last month, we announced a new plan, which will be the world's first benchmark for autonomous vehicle planning. It's going to have a large-scale machine learning data set and a toolkit for measuring the performance of planning techniques. So this essentially, amounts to a virtual driving test. So we're really excited to release that later this year. And I think these types of initiatives are going to be important for the industry.
Yeah, wow, that's so cool. Do you believe the changes to mobility needs, for example, more people working at home, less commuting, that have occurred as an outcome of the pandemic have created more challenges or opportunities for the AV industry?
That's an interesting question. I think it's certainly, created opportunities in terms of opening people's minds a bit to, why you might want to rely on robotics or, autonomous systems as opposed to kind of status quo. So I think we've seen some change in some of the conversations around AVs because of that. Certainly we face, the same challenges that many do, which is we still are, mostly work from home other than our essential workers. So, our teams don't have as much access to the cars as they used to. And, in-person collaboration has changed. We now do it through Zoom. So that certainly has an effect, but we've been, really proactive in thinking about still maintaining, our culture and really our innovation, making sure that we're still fueling our innovation, even though people are mostly working from home.
Yeah, no, I think your point about, just sort of something like this, shaking up established habits that people would never question before I've seen that in so many aspects of life. And yeah, that has to be a cool opportunity for new technology like this. Getting to the last couple questions here. I very rarely see anything about how companies, this is the question that was submitted. This is not my personal question here, but phrased in the first person. I very rarely see anything about how companies and organizations are trying to ensure vehicles will be physically accessible for people with disabilities that use mobility devices, and just in general, how they're looking to ensure this new mode of transportation will be accessible to everybody.
Yeah, I'm happy you asked this question. It is very important. And at Motional, accessibility is something that we focus on, and we're building our vehicles to serve everyone, everywhere. And that includes those with disabilities. So it's a part of our product design work. And so, for example, our product team recently conducted a comprehensive accessibility study to understand and design for the challenges facing disabled riders. Individuals, this included, a mix of physical and sensory and cognitive disabilities for more than, a dozen areas, and all participated in this study. And we use these types of findings to help shape our product design to make sure, that our vehicle can serve a wide range of users, regardless of disability. We recently, posted a blog post about this, and it's available on the Motional website if anyone wants to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll include a link to that in the description for YouTube. And if you are watching this on YouTube, I'd suggest go check out PAVE's video library really quick. We have a bunch of interviews with teams from the Inclusive Design Challenge, where DOT is, has prize money for new accessibility technologies for AVs. And it's something that we've been really excited about and really proud to help be a part of and drive some attention to. So kind of to wrap this conversation up, we've covered so many different really fascinating things, but I feel like this question kind of brings a lot of this stuff together. And that is, what would you recommend we tell our fellow drivers that would make them feel more comfortable and confident with the technology that comes with vehicles today, both today and into the future?
Yeah, I would say, look at the safety benefits we've already seen across the automotive industry. So back in, if you look back in time around in 2013, ADAS or active safety technologies, were available, in less than 5% of new passenger vehicles. NHTSA estimates that 99% of passenger vehicles are going to have, some level of collision prevention systems like an AEB by late 2022. And we've seen this impact, in the safety of our roads. There wide range of research around this, but one that I found had around 20% reduction in passenger injury already due to ADAS technology for the level that it's at today. So this is good evidence that there's progress, there's hope, that an autonomous system can improve from this point even more if it's designed correctly. For us, we've driven 100,000 miles on the Lyft network, not to mention, over 1 million miles across all of our operations, and we've had 0 at-fault incidents. So again, we continue to build confidence internally as well. And, I think human drivers, can feel safe. If they look around and they see an AV next to them, they know that AV is never texting or drunk or distracted by a conversation within their vehicle. The vehicle's only purpose is to drive as safely as possible. And so, if it's designed correctly, it really has the potential to improve the safety of our roads.
Absolutely, fantastic answer. And if I could add just a little bit, for me, what makes a huge difference in that is just hearing the people who are working on these projects, people like Laura, hearing you talk about this and just how important safety is and how really everything kind of ultimately ties back into safety and building that public trust. I mean, I remember the first time I got in a fully driverless ride, I was like, wait a second, why do I trust this? And those were the things that I thought about, the ways that the people who did this development work talked about it. And which is why, we're so glad that Laura, you were able to take the time today to come and do that with us as well. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and to help explain these or answer these really fascinating questions.
Thanks so much, Ed. Yeah, great to be here, and I really enjoyed the discussion.
Absolutely. And again, Laura Major is the Chief Technology Officer at Motional, which is an autonomous vehicle development company. We want to also thank you, our audience, for taking the time to learn a little bit more about automated vehicles. We really appreciate it. And if you want to learn more, you can find us on the web at www.pavecampaign.org. We're on Twitter and most social media platforms at PAVE Campaign. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, please do, again, go check out our video library. We have a lot of these, actually, these kinds of conversations. And if you're curious about this topic, there's so much more to learn. So thank you. And we will see you all here again next week for another of PAVE's weekly virtual discussions.